We knew you had swag, but you've been given Auburn swag.
It's expensive.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm so glad you're here, especially in the lead up to Thanksgiving. It's such a pleasure. This is the final event of our fall of Playful Conversations, but I am pleased to report as of this past week, thanks to the support of both Pebble Hill and the Office of the Provost, we're keeping the party going in the spring. So look to the aub.ie/PH Games for information as we bring more amazing folks to campus and some returning folks. Hi, if you haven't been to one of these events before, I am Dr. Emily Friedman. I'm the Lyles Professor of English at Auburn University. I'm an 18th centuryist by training, a book historian and a digital humanist who about half a decade ago stumbled into the world of studying games and people who love them, perform them, play with them in all kinds of ways. And as a public scholar, I have modeled my work on many folks inside and outside of the academy, many of whom we've gotten a chance to talk to across this semester and beyond. And so I'm so pleased to add to that number my friend and colleague, Quintin Smith. Best known for SEO purposes as Quinns, he has spent 2 decades and counting moving through different parts of games media, including video game journalism, board game reviewing, and most recently becoming fascinated by the world of tabletop role-playing games, which of course is also near and dear to my heart. We've been having conversations about community with Matt Mercer, with Meg A. Baker, and more this semester, and we're doing something just a little bit of a variation on that theme, thinking about public communities and how we garden them and nurture them, especially as public faces in different kinds of ways, as well as fostering communities at our private tables. We're going to take the time that Quinns wants to take or can take before we have a brief reception to give Quinns a bit of sustenance before the 6 o'clock Blood on the Clock Tower run. So if you're staying for that, welcome. We're so glad you're here. I could go on in an embarrassing way about my debts to Quinns, and I will refrain because he will murder me if I do so. And I'm excited to get this conversation started. As with all of our guests, this is the public face of lots of private conversations in all kinds of ways, including 2 really wonderful class visits today. So please joining me in welcoming to Auburn, Mr. Quintin Smith. Hello.
That's loud.
We are so tired, but so happy to have you here. And so I've been starting these conversations with questions about the communities that make you. But I want to spin this a little bit for you, which is I want you to reflect on the communities that have come to you and that you have had a hand in. The metaphor you often use is gardening. Okay. And so I'm curious where that question leads you first in your career.
This is either a good or tragic answer to your question. I've never set out to make a community. I really just generated them by accident. I had a really simple through line for my career, which hasn't changed, even though I've talked about different kinds of games or even done, documentaries about stuff where the people involved don't even consider themselves gamers, like the communities of VR Chat or Wasteland Weekend. But I just want to cover the games that people aren't talking about enough. Like I'm a Libra, and there's a sort of cosmic injustice when people are doing something really cool and no one's talking about them. Especially when the games press, like any art form, I guess, will take certain monoliths of an industry and then talk about them over and over and over again. And it is worth discussing Minecraft and Roblox and Fortnite. And also, there are people doing stuff that's just as interesting that no one's talking about, and I want to shine the spotlight on them. And then as I've done that and made YouTube channels, communities are created around those YouTube channels, and the panicked gardening that I do of those communities is entirely a response to, if I do a brief show of hands in here, to hand people aware of the words Gamergate? We got, oh, good. Okay, great. So for the folks that are a little less aware, Gamergate was a retaliatory movement that happened in video games when there was kind of ever since the 80s, due to like history that I find interesting, but I won't get into, that is involved in the first home computers being marketed at men. Games have been like were more so a male industry, and then as a bunch of like people from different backgrounds, but predominantly women in games, started being like, hey, could these games be less embarrassing and misogynist and more aimed at women? And then certain figures, such as ridiculously Steve Bannon, led a charge of trying to like essentially chase the feminists back out of games, and it was a horrific moment in games history that caused so many really talented people who weren't straight white men to be forced out of the industry. But that led to a lot of us realizing that if you do not take care of your own community, if you do not show up like the voice of God occasionally and be like, hey, don't say that, don't act that way, your community will, or may, certainly become a cesspool. So my community management is like, nothing would erase the pride I have in my career quicker than seeing a community of people who are just meet up to discuss the like videos I make. If that became problematic or misogynistic or homophobic or anything else, even just rude, I don't have time for it. So yes, while I have communities that made me in a way that's probably more apt to your question, right now my relationship to community is just like panicked scything back of elements, because Gamergate was just so traumatizing for so many of us, and it would be a disgrace if any of us didn't learn lessons from it.
And so when you talk about that scything, is that moderation? Is that other ways of signaling that you're doing in your work?
There's lots of stuff you can do, but with YouTube parasocialism, like people, because of I do this with podcasters that I like or YouTubers that I like. When you watch a figure for a long time, you do it generally because you like them, and then your brain starts being like, I'm friends with them. So to me, so much of my moderation in my community is like someone's being a dickhead in the community, and then I just show up and I'm like, what are you doing? And especially if I haven't made a post all week, the fact that I am watching and I show up as your best friend and I'm like, you're awful, then that it immediately transforms their behavior like very, very quickly. But also, I do have moderators and I do a lot of things. And of course, something I always tell YouTubers or any content creators to do is whatever you care about, whether that's political or even just an emotional, charitable cause you have, put that in your work, because it will preemptively tend the community, because it'll push people away that aren't part of that community. I feel like you asked a nice question about like, let's talk about community and what that means for you. And to me, it means like 1,000-yard stare and like being like, it can't be disgraceful. Like, it's not a positive.
No, I am a good enough interviewer to know where my subject's probably going to take us, right? Is that we've been kind of talking across this semester in these kinds of warm and fuzzy ways about community, but communities is just a neutral term for a group of human beings in a lot of ways. And those communities can become harmful in all kinds of ways, or can be exclusionary in all kinds of ways. And so I think you're right to identify the ways in which we have to think about that in different kinds of modes as critics and creators, thinking about how do we curate an audience? How do we find our people?
But also peculiarly, like my audience is who I speak to, but in as much as I'm engaging with a community, it's designers. It's the people who make games. But because I criticize their work, and also it becomes very complicated to do your job as a critic if you become besties with like loads of designers. Like it's super weird, right? All of my work is spent looking forward at the designers and what they're making, and then complimenting often, but sometimes criticizing their work. So I'm looking at them, but I'm on the outside, and then I develop this increasingly large community behind me, but I'm like, all I'm really doing is slapping my hand behind them and being like, behave, and then to continuing to look at the designers, which is really who I'm doing this for.
So I guess that's the other question. I mean, and you and I have talked about this a lot, is in terms of the communities of practice whose work we are communicating about, evaluating, assessing, judging, making more visible sometimes, sometimes not. Are you in community with them?
With designers?
Yeah.
I'm sorry? Am I in community with them? I feel like, honestly, now I have a large platform. I feel like I'm more like a force of nature that passes over them. And
the cast of Critical Role has talked about a mech suit.
Oh, a mech suit. Yeah, that works for them. My thing is different. That like it is impossible now. Now I have a large platform. It is impossible for me to tell if my relationship with any designer is real because they have every reason to be polite to me. Because like, why wouldn't you be? Like, I'm friendly and polite, or I try to be. That naturally means that they're polite to me, but also like I can affect the sales of their game to a degree that like I kind of don't consider any of my relationships with designers to be real. I cosplay that they're real, but I know that there's got to be a really complicated delivering.
Cosplay, please.
Well, why wouldn't I? The only way I can not go mad is if I meet a designer and they're friendly to me and I'm friendly to them. I don't overthink that. It's just like, we have a friendly relationship. If I was to overthink it, I'd be like, well, obviously they're being friendly to me because if they have a good relationship with me, I'm fractionally more likely to cover their games, and fractionally more likely to like look on those designs and those creative decisions positively. And then therefore all the reasons that I'm like, that whole relationship then becomes false. It's like a sort of tree that looks like it's living, but actually it's fully dead. But obviously relationships are complicated. Like I'm sure that those designers do think fondly of me, kind of rather. I don't know. You ask them good questions, and I just don't think about this stuff because I can't.
No, because I'm driving you mad. Yeah. Only temporarily, I hope. But I think one of the things that you've said is that you think that this is that there's something about tabletop that's role-playing games that's somehow distinct from, or is it distinct? Is this kind of relationship, community, negotiation, like, does it rhyme with board games? Does it rhyme?
I think it sucks more in tabletop role-playing. The different corners of games that I've worked in have all felt really distinct. When I was covering video games, like generally, that's a lot of people making a product, and it's got a lot of different, like, that leads to a lot of really peculiar pain and frustration. Like, it's the only industry I know of where currently all of my friends who make video games will spend 5 years of their life on something that will be canned. Like, they don't know that, obviously, but you get this close to making something and then it's just cancelled. Funding runs out. It's pulled, whatever. That's ridiculous. Don't imagine because if you're lucky, you could get, if you work in the video games industry, you can get credits on like, make a game, you appear in the credits. You make another game, you put in the credits. Just as easy for someone who could spend, like, come out of college, spend 10 years working in the video games industry and everything gets canned. So you can't point to anything. You go from 20 years old to 30 years old and you can't point to a single video game and be like, I made that because it's all been cancelled. So like but all the same, like, I don't know. That's just an example of what video games feels peculiar and commercial and interesting. And then board games is like, very logical. For board games is like, there's not a ton of money in it. Also, board games is interesting because it's like a very lossless format of art. Like, I really felt that when I was working in it. It led me to feel like quite close to a lot of board game designers because, like, if you set out to make like a video game or a TV show, what you imagine will be different to the final product. But with board games, you don't have that. With a board game, you're like, I think I want to make a game like this, and then you do it. And then I show up and I'm like, that sucks, or whatever. But often it's when you put designers who make great game after great game, you really do feel like you're looking inside their head. There's no aspect of the creative process that means the game they make is like somehow wonkified by the time it gets to the other side. They have an idea, they make it, it's done. And in role-playing games, even, I feel like the process is more slippery than that. I feel like you have an idea and then people, because for one among many reasons, it's going to be played differently by different games masters, right? Your experience of what your game should be is going to be different at every single table. But then when you said like, what I said jokingly at the top of this, like working in role-playing games sucks. It's partially because it feels more emotional, more theatrical, and more artistic than other fields that I've worked in. And it has much less of an experience, much as a history of being criticized by critics like me. So it feels like a very emotional space where people don't like being judged. But even so, it needs critics for sure, and it'll get more used to being criticized, but it's not the most comfortable place I found myself.
Even though you've been the tip of the spear before. But yeah.
In games, that's just something about board games that means they're less like, it's less emotional. I can go to a board game designer and be like, your game's good, not great. And I'll be like, okay, I'll make another one. And then in role-playing games, it's like, you say your game's good, not great. They're like, I just get the slightest allergy of like, them being like, oh, really? Super interesting. Yeah. You failed to play my game correctly. And it's like, I guess.
What is the role of the critic in role-playing games?
I don't know, man.
This is so much fun.
The question's only going to get this bad or worse. Carousel, the door's right there. I can bolt. There's no one you can't stop me.
I drove you here, Quinns.
I
You don't know how to get to the hotel.
I will run down the street and ask. Okay. Anyway.
Well, and I ask this to explain. I'll vamp for a minute so Quinns cogitate, but this is a thing we've thought about and talked about before, right? Because we're both in these new forms, actual play and the actual games themselves.
Yes. I have being here. I have pressured you to criticize stuff and be mean, and broadly your response has been some answer that always boils down to like, I could never.
I tried really hard recently, but it's hard.
You're very embedded in the actual play space, and I can like, I would just be so brutal if you would. Well, we've also talked about the fact that within actual play, so much. I just think you should think about the within the actual play space, so much of what you that we don't talk about is the charm and the charisma. That is like so much of the USP of actual play. So, and
USP is, for the audience, please.
Unique selling point.
Yeah, there we go.
Nice, thank you very much. I'm usually that person to. So,
gotcha, man.
Thank you. But yeah. Reviewing actual play, honestly, I think would have to be so much of like, these folks got no swag. Like, that's just, no one wants to publish that.
Step one, I don't like their faces.
Yeah, and that's for real though, right? Like, the step one, I don't like looking at them. Like, people who work in marketing talk about this all the time, this idea of stickiness, which is I just think this is interesting. But there are some human beings that are not necessarily good looking, but that we just look at, like, that you're statistically more likely to just stare at, and it's a unique attribute from being good looking or handsome. It's like, put their marketing, like, oh, let's hire this person for this commercial because they're really sticky.
So a few weeks ago, when you and I were talking to Brennan Mulligan, I asked, is Riz a skill? Yeah. Both of you said to me it was.
Yeah, yes. It's a learnable skill, and Riz is also contained, it's like a bucket that contains so many different things, some of which are learnable and some of which I think are intrinsic. To get back to the actual question, what is the role of the reviewer in role-playing games? I mean, fundamentally, like, it's a desperately important thing, because so much of the way people play role-playing games is like, they are deciding the game that they and their friends will meet up with to play for months, if not maybe like a year. I don't know. Like, they're desperately, there's like hundreds of these games. Like, even if you're just going off like what is hype right now, there are dozens. So the community desperately needs someone to be like really breaking apart like where these different games succeed or fail, actually playing them, saying like, and it genuinely, and they're actually playing them leads me to all kinds of important conclusions. Like, this game is a pain in the ass to learn and get to the table, and it was the most fun I've had, playing one of these games in a while. It also obviously needs more than just me doing it. Like, for this to become a happy ecosystem, you need to be able to find a critic that plays games the way that you do, or is interested in the things the way you do. You saw a talk on Quinns Quest that I'm acutely aware that, like, yeah, okay, I've become more visible very quickly than anyone else in the role-playing space reviewing games. I'm also a mostly straight white dude, and that means the kind of games that I'm interested in are different, and that means I've got this huge platform and I'm pointing my spotlight at a lot of other, almost entirely white dudes, which is not
still issue.
skill. Well,
no, but it's also I say that in a kind of cheap way.
No, I think it's good.
But I
liked it.
No, but I think this is the interesting question that I think that comes back to the thing that both of us have to think about, which is, do we have to educate our taste, right? Is it let 1,000 flowers grow? For now, you and I have the time and expertise to talk about our respective fields with, a certain amount of expertise, authority, and audience. And there will be others, good Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. But for now, is it incumbent upon us to try to like more stuff than we instinctively like?
Yes, I think so. I think, yeah, a critic should be trying new stuff all the time. Because, I mean, how else can they be secure in what they like? Even if, like, I don't know, I don't usually like analogies in this kind of example, but like, let's say, you're a car reviewer who only, no, I hate it. All this analogy is horrible. It's so greasy. No, like, even if I was the person who only have like D&D modules or like only talked about D&D, I think it would behoove me to like go and play things other than D&D to be reminded of the specific ways in which that I enjoy D&D, or knowing in which ways D&D is different. Yeah, no, a critic should be trying new stuff all the time. The question that I think you're really asking is like, should a critic be trying to like force themselves to develop a taste for different things? And
that is what I'm asking.
Yeah. I don't know. It depends on the critic. It depends on how broad-minded they are. It depends on what they're reviewing, which is a crap answer, but like, it depends.
Right. I mean, these are beautiful abstracts, right? And then there's us in our embodied practice.
I will say, I really enjoy, I didn't come to pass, but there was a really like positive example of this where like, there are a fair few tabletop role-playing games that want to tell wushu stories, like the Chinese fantasy tradition of like, I mean, like that is almost exclusively seen in Chinese cinema. I mean, like, obviously Chinese cinema makes all kinds of stuff, but you will find wushu stories in Chinese TV and movies and books. And I'm very interested in it. And when I mentioned I was interested on Blue Sky, there was a Chinese American game designer or critic, and she's a podcaster actually, and she was like, I would love to play a game with you online, to GM it for you, walk you through the genre, walk you through the tropes and the game design. And I was like, that would be sick. That didn't happen, which is a shame, because my long-term plan that I really want to run is I want to take one of these wushu games and hack them. So it's about, obviously I want to pull the authentic thing, but it's very appealing to me to run a wushu game set in the sort of like weird kung fu dojos of the north of England, where it's like, it was a really specific kind of English guy who I think it actually translates. Like, so you had like small town New England dude gets super into Wing Chun Kung Fu, like he's white as anything, like, and I really like to do the magical English wushu story where it's those guys, but they still have the ability to like, jump over roofs and but they're smoking the entire time and getting a lot of Chinese culture wrong. That to do that story, I would have to be able to get authentically right in order to do my own comedic spin on it. Anyway, this has just been a sidetrack, but like that is the kind of stuff that I want to do and I'm exploring regularly.
Yeah. I mean, there's also the question of, right, so often we think about reviews as they relate to product, right? And of course, you are now in a field where some things are products. Some things are very beautiful, glossy, aesthetically pleasing, make $1 million on Kickstarter or more. Our most recent guest was Meg A. Baker, who's got a more modest, but doing very well, Apocalypse World, 3rd edition, burned over crowdfund. But a lot of this stuff just circulates in zines outside of the, kind of logics of capital. And I'm curious how you navigate the fact that there's like this huge range.
This is really tough. It's all the horrible questions. Yeah. So many of the most interesting designs in the tabletop role-playing game space have got on a rare. It's like a lot of people coming from like quite an artistic community making games that don't resemble products, that don't have fancy art design, but not expensive, but are just really interesting ideas circulated as PDFs. And I don't know. I think it's kind of so like what you're obviously hinting at is like, if I'm doing justice to the space, I should be playing those games that are like simple, that are like, that don't resemble products, that are just great pieces of art made by like great people. And so much of what I end up covering is the stuff that is glossy, that is a fancy product, to which the fact is that like, I'm interested in doing work that ends in people playing the games. Like, I'm interested in, that's the impact for me, is like, I want to touch the face of the culture. I want to move the medium forward. And if I say, this game's amazing, and then no one plays it, I don't know what kind of impact I've actually made. I mean, maybe I've put that game in front of designers, you know, who then might riff on it, people might think about it. And that does have value in and of itself. Like, we were just talking about how one of the first articles that put me on the map was a review of Pathologic, which is a Russian game that's so unpleasant that like no one actually right. And so that, I guess, as it was a total example of this, that like I wrote like 7,000 words about that, and everyone's like, what an amazing, that genuinely seems to have changed like that tiny bit of what games are. And the thought of, does anyone play it? I don't know, not really. Like, but just talking about something that's interesting does have value. Okay, I get that. At the same, will I just find myself in RPGs right now? Like, okay, let's put it this way. Yes, the people who are making simple PDFs that are great ideas that aren't developing them as a product are making art, and that should be like lionized by someone, maybe by me. The thing is, though, the people who are making a product are doing all that same art and other kinds of art. Like, they are acknowledging that they're like, oh, what's the fancy academic term for like a product that is made up of multiple components? It's like a German word. It was.
You've got me stumped, right?
Gestalt.
Well, Gestalt is a whole. It's one of those terrible German words that's 5 million words.
Yeah, right. Okay, whatever. The point is that like, it's easy to
head in the comments to this YouTube video,
because Emily is like asking me questions that are really, I personally now feel triggered to do to defend myself. I'm gonna like now take this answer into a place that I'm even going to start dropping games that I'm sure lots of people in the audience haven't heard of. If you take something like Myth at Bastionland, which I reviewed mercenarily, that is that sharp artistic product. And it's paired with beautiful layout that is an art in itself. It's paired with beautiful product design and like internal art. All of that is art by itself. All of that has to cohere and pull in the same direction, which is another skill set. So yeah, I think it's, I guess if you're the kind of like artist who's like broke and making a PDF of a game that's really interesting, and then you don't have the, you know, like the inclination to turn it into a product, it's easy to look at the products and be like, oh, well, Quinns is cynically reviewing like the fancy books that drive forward the capitalist machine. To which I say, yeah, that's one way to view it. The other way to view it is, you are really good at this one kind of art. I'm reviewing the products that take multiple different disciplines and then combine them into a product that, while it looks kind of slimy and disreputable because it's then something you sell for $40 and you try and make a living off of, then it's art. You can argue that it's the more coherent, like it's the more rich and deep artistic product as well. It's just that our society like looks at something that you can't sell and then says, well, that's somehow more artistically noble. Like that's where the artists really need love. And it's like, I don't know if that's actually any different. That's just the early version of what I'm reviewing, which is the end products that look fancy.
It's funny because in our most recent class, we were talking also about the pleasures of suffering. And there's a connective tissue that also seems to be here in terms of the pleasure that you have historically taken in things like Pathologic and other kinds of, and I think the interesting pain points are in those.
There's a difference between, there's a difference between a game. I kind of love this. There's a difference.
I know, because we're insurance.
There's a difference between a game that like is trying to escape the like slightly childish young element of games as an artistic medium, where games are like tend to be like playful power fantasies that are satisfying and therefore don't engage with like the suffering that is part of other older forms of art, right? That's what we were just talking about in the last meeting. An RPG that is just a PDF is not a piece of art that wants you to engage in suffering. That's just an unfinished piece of art. Like if you create an RPG that looks gorgeous, that is like a fabulous book that I can sell to my audience, and that when you play really makes you engage with horrible themes of suffering, yeah, that's great. I'm all about it. But let's not confuse pieces of art that are like basic and unfinished with pieces of art that are like designed to make you feel pain.
No,
I thought I really like what you did there. That was really nice.
And I was also thinking, like, we were talking and explaining to, I think, both classes, or definitely the 18th century novel class of all things, Horse Girl, right? Which is a zine.
If everyone in this room should look up and guy Horse Girl, like.
So Horse Girl, because we are not going to assume that anyone in this room knows this game, is a game about you as an individual, like, solo player, are being transformed into a horse by your basically abusive, terrible boyfriend. It is a metaphor for how a bad relationship can make you not who you are.
It's a journaling game, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, so you sit down to play it, and then the prompt will be something like, you know, your partner comes into the room and is like, oh, your teeth are really coming through. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, thanks.
You journal on how that makes you feel. You are obviously becoming a monster, and they already said
what entities leave the relationship, but
right.
Don't do that.
Yeah, or like we were looking at that game that's designed, like, in its best form, Spine. You print that PDF, you sew that PDF together because you're going to destroy that book, whether you bought it in a kind of print on demand form or you built it yourself. The process of engaging with that game is
I guess what we're talking about here is it's the way that I want to center games that are acknowledged. Part of game design is making a game that's like that achieves what you want artistically, whether that's just entertainment or satisfying, or whether it makes you feel something. But a huge part of game design is making something that people actually want to play, that they can play, that they play a little bit and then they come back to, right? And I think that when we look at the fact that on Quinns Quest I do very little examination of the whole huge field of role-playing games that are like a little more bare bones, I would maybe, like, politically unwisely say that, to me, that is a bunch of game designers not engaging with the fact that a whole half of this craft is ensuring that people actually show up to your store and are engaged by what they find there. And then, you know, because games are self-directed, right? Like, I mean, all arts are to some extent, but at least with a painting, you can look at it and then move on and you've absorbed it. With a game, you got to stay there. You got to experience that, and you've got to, like, actually do the verbs that the game designer wants you to do. And whether those verbs are like thinking or writing or, you know, or imagining or whatever, if we want players to, like, verb at this piece of art, then part of designing a piece of art is keeping them there. They're not, you know, they're not prisoners. Like, they will go to another piece of art that also has something to say, but that makes it easy for them to, you know, to engage with it.
I mean, it's also interesting, you know, obviously, like, these two completely out there examples that we were just talking about are solo games. And you seem very interested in games that bring people together at your tables.
It's actually just the fact that I'm trying to get people off D&D. That's the because the thing about role playing is I've never in my career in games seen one brand absorb more of the, like, oxygen. It's similar but different to how when I showed up in board games, I was like, how is it possible that there are so many amazing board games and everyone keeps buying Monopoly? And then the answer is just it's Hasbro again, weirdly, because Hasbro owned Wizards that owns D&D. Hasbro! But yeah, like, Hasbro were able to trade off nostalgia, which is similar to what D&D does, that, like, you played Monopoly with your parents. Therefore, when you have kids, Hasbro is like, here's a multi-million-dollar marketing budget to make sure you never forget Monopoly, so that you think, oh, maybe I'll play Monopoly with my kids. And then even though it's a game that's literally more than 100 years old, it's just... Anyway. So, yeah.
It's original The Landlord's game.
It was originally The Landlord's game, designed by Elizabeth Magie, I believe, to teach people that... Do you know about this Monopoly? Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, you folks...
This audience.
You folks are smart. I like this. Thank you all very much for coming, everybody. This is a great audience. Yeah, so... Oh, yes, D&D is like... Nothing is going to stop an artistic from developing more than if, like, everyone who shows up to role-playing ends up playing this, like, returning to this one brand. Worse, a brand you designed to play for years? What? Like, you show up, you play D&D, and it's hard to learn, therefore you never want to learn another game. I don't even have a problem with D&D. I've played D&D. I will continue to play D&D. I would if, like, it wasn't just this huge, like, 2001 Space Odyssey monolith that's like absorbing all the light in the room and making sure that nothing else can grow.
Yeah, the market share for Dungeons and Dragons is completely.
Yeah, but don't think of role. When I describe what I do for a living, like I'm into role playing, and they're blank face, and I'm like, D&D, and they're like, oh yeah, and I go, no, other games, and they're like, and then they lose interest.
Well, and that's the thing I find really interesting, right? Like we've talked about the project of Quinns Quest being to wean. So at last claimed by Hasbro, I think it's something like 50 million people have played Dungeons and Dragons at some point. Bonkers numbers. And so that's, carving off even a small slice of that, you can build a whole company off of, right? And companies like MCDM and Barrington Press and others are trying to do just that, like do the conversion. And we just spent so much time with students whose almost none of the students you've talked to today have ever played D&D, and have come into the hobby, at least in a classroom setting, through other games, in other kinds of ways. And I'm wondering, why the focus on conversion rather than all those people who you talk to at a party, you say D&D and they're like, I'm done.
Oh, right. I see what you mean. Why try and people? I guess is it conversion? It's really just. Sean McCoy, who made Mothership, has a point that the thing about everyone playing D&D first, and then obviously, like you say, there are people who come to other games first. There are people whose friends are into like Microscope or whatever, or Yoseba's Bed and Breakfast, and that's their entry into the hobby. But for most people, they play D&D first, and then the thing about that is it cooks your assumption. It's like when you bake pottery, it bakes your assumption in a kiln so that you think that's what things have to look like, and it shapes everything about role playing. Like, you assume that a role-playing game has to be a campaign. You assume that your character has to start weak and get stronger. You assume that generally in fights you're expected to win. You assume it's like a party of people who travel together and that never changes and they never fall out, or
it's the found family. It's the friends.
It's the friends we made along the way while killing 1,000 other people who made them our friends, but we'll never know because we're best friends. But so why do I review the games that I review? Because there's an assumption that that's what role playing is, and so you got to be like, what if you did all those things but a little different? What if we did a campaign but I don't know.
What if we What if we stopped assuming that there's a game master?
What if he's perfect? Yeah. But then this is why I get super excited about Jubensha in I'm not going to pronounce it with the tones. Did you see? It doesn't matter. So I did a documentary on Jubensha, and do people know that documentary? No. Good, great, interesting. I got something to teach you. So did you know that role playing is like the biggest hobby in China, and they do it completely differently to us? And it's like a whole. So if you search for I've got a documentary on People Make Games. If you search for Quinns and Jubensha on YouTube, you'll find it. But yeah, it's like role playing has just evolved completely differently. Over there, it evolved from basically the murder mystery dinner party. So the way role playing works in China is, first off, you go to like a venue to do it. And the games masters work there. So and you always play in groups of 6. So like the 6 of us would show, do you want to play Jubensha tonight? Then we go to this venue. And then there's like a games master with a wall of games. And he's like, what are you into? Or they're like, what are you into? Because actually the gender of the games master is part of the thing. We might be like, we want to do a romance, or we want to do a, whatever. And then you play a game that lasts about 6 hours, but it's quite tightly scripted. So we're all given a character, we're given a mystery to solve, we're given like evidence that comes out slowly, and then by the end, and those games are designed that if you play one of the like heartbreaky ones, they are sold to you as, we run this all the time, and by the end of it, everyone's crying. Like that, it's so different, and the whole well, games master, right? The games master has a facilitator who drifts in and out. There's no like male skew to the player base. There's no skew towards combat. There's no skew towards leveling up. It's way closer to literature. It's like, oh my God. And it's designed that you have no prior knowledge. There's no rules to learn. It's, oh my God. I get so inspired when I look at this stuff, and so disturbed that there are often times in my career, where I find something that's so huge and I become properly livid with the rest of the games press that they just haven't looked at this. Like the moment I found out about it, I was reaching out on Discord and I went to Singapore to try and meet these people. And still no one's done a documentary like, oh my God, it's almost like, it's almost not too much to say like that it's racist to be like, that people look at this game, this astonishing game design happening in China and are just disinterested. And like, what possible reason could you get? If this was happening in France, you'd be all over it. It's happening in China and you're not interested. What? Like, I don't know. I think I don't want to get to, I'm sure you can pull me out of this hole that I've dug for myself, but like.
Well, it's interesting, right, that you transitioned from the like, we should not assume GMs, let's think about GM-less, the GM list that gets, or the facilitated rather than GMs that gets you most excited is Jubentia. The role-playing game that has some level of, if not homework, like reading.
Yeah, you have to read. Yeah.
So it's this interesting kind of, there's a question about labor, right? Like,
yeah. But it's like, how cooked is our like idea of what role playing is? That like China is like, yeah, you're going to show up and we're going to read a booklet for 15 minutes, and we're like, no. But it's like, but with D&D, it's like, here's page one of your character sheets, and here is the rule book. Boom. Here's a 300-page. There's another 300-page rule book. You'll be learning this over the course of 6 months, and you'll still get it wrong at the end of that.
Well, will you, in the structure that is the GM is going to be responsible for my pleasure and doing all the work so that I can just show up with my beer and Skittles.
I know what you mean, but but still there's a point where you're in a room and there's a skeleton coming at you and the DM says, what do you do? And you say, I use my throwing knife. You're still doing labor. You still have to learn what all the different things on your character sheets do.
I have a couple of my home game folks who would be very good.
You know what, dude? No, but you know what is labor? Learning how many sides the dice have. Like, you take someone who doesn't know what a D12 is and be like, well, the D12, it's not work.
But it is interesting, I think. Well, because I think you're right to defamiliarize these things and say these are labor too, right? But we don't, in the same way that we were talking earlier today about all of these baked-in assumptions that you were talking about in terms of D&D, all of these kind of narrative assumptions we have in video games about some of which come from D&D, right? And also we had a student who was asking about satisfying endings or suffering meaning something. All of those are kind of part and parcel of those things that we just assume more the water and air we breathe.
Yeah, I saw one of these recently that I was thinking about. Do people in this room know Dispatch? They're sort of like meme focused. Yeah, like it's super good. I just finished it. Like superhero. You play the call dispatcher for a group of superheroes. So you're like, oh, there's a fire. You go and deal with it. It has QTEs, right? It has action sequences. And like when you get into fights, they're like, press A to deflect and stuff. And I've seen so many complaints being like, the QTEs don't do anything. And what they mean is like, when you're in a fight, if the person you're fighting is stronger than you press A right on time, you do hit him and it doesn't do anything and then you get leathered. Versus if you fail the QTE, he just hits you. And it's like, it's so baked into like gamer mindset that it's like, I won the QTE, I should therefore destroy whoever's in front of me. It's like, no, you're playing someone where like, and that's much more human. You're playing at somebody who on a good day, they embarrass themselves less. That's human, right? Like, anyway, but I just saw those comments being like, no, if I win the QTE, I should win the scene. And it's like, what do you think literature is? Like, I don't know. It's so... Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about assumptions this trip, I guess.
No, we really have, right? Like, and how do we break out of those? Because that's where the interesting art develops, right? In all kinds of ways.
Yeah, and of course we need assumptions because it's by breaking assumptions that you actually often create art, right?
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, and what are the ones that serve us? What are the ones that don't? So many of the ones that and what are the ones that we notice, right? When I worked on smell, one of the things I like to say was our ancestors could smell air conditioning if they came in as a time traveler, right?
Is that true?
Probably. I mean, the composition of this filtered and altered air is different from the air outside. We don't necessarily perceive it as, because it is not foreign or unique to our system, and our smell is designed to detect what's new and different.
There's actually I'm getting more interested in the LARP community through like the really
live action role playing.
Yeah,
more table required.
Yeah, no table required, and like specifically, I'm getting more interested in like there's a European school of LARP which mostly comes out of Scandinavia, which is like, there's fantasy and there's sci-fi sometimes, but by and large, it's like chamber LARPs or multi-day LARPs where like, I don't know, what are some of the ones I've signed up to do since January? I've signed up to do my first festival, and like, there's one where it's like, generally all these LARPs are like 2 hours, and one of them is you are nuns. You are all nuns. You are like 6 nuns in, I don't even know when, it's like, 1700 or something. And you have a really strict schedule of like, you do something, it's just in a room like this, right? But you might go between gardening to praying to, I don't know, like eating to something else. And so you're doing that loop representing the days. And the plot of the LARP is that in a week, this like famous, slightly, what's the word? Basically sexy priest. It was like kind of is coming. And he's got like new interpretations of the faith, and he's coming to stay with you a little bit. And that's the LARP, is like, you're trying to keep life together. How does your nun respond? Is she excited? Is she scared? Is she trying to be like, we need to cancel this trip? That's the LARP. So that's like an idea, like it's Nordic LARP goes in all kinds of directions, but it's the kind of like wacky stuff I'm doing. Anyway, damn it, how did I get onto this? Oh yeah, that was it. Assumptions. The Nordic LARP community prefer players who've never role played. They prefer people who come from the theater community, because if you come in with no expectations and you're like, oh, I guess I'm going to pretend to be someone else, you are better at playing those games than if you're a gamer who walks in and you're like, what are our thing? I'm like, but
how do I win this nun condition?
Yeah, how do we know which of us nun the best at the end? It's like, can I mount a rebellion? And it's like, just be a nun, dude. Like,
being the best possible nun is both achievable.
Right. Anyway, yeah. So I think, I don't know, like it's just me and my friends now use the like, it's like the skill issue thing that you throw around. It's like skill issue, gamer mindset. These are things we make fun of because I don't think they're serving us very well. I mean, obviously, I'm oversimplifying this, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the framing of it's so interesting. So I don't think we've ever said this publicly, but so there was some parental concern when Matt Mercer came to town because we were using the word game a lot and gaming in our advertising. And around here, gaming is associated with gambling. And so we were like, wait, is this glorifying gambling? And then we've pivoted to thinking about play and things. But yeah, the connotations of...
I have a take on that specifically.
Go ahead.
I did a talk on the history of board games and card games, and researching it was so cool. It led me to so many amazing places. Like, I don't know, the fact that dice are a fully religious object originally, which I could get in. I mean, I'll tell you folks, because... show of hands, will know how dice was started off as a religious way over there, being like absolutely killing it. But yeah, so dice originally evolved from sheep knuckle bones, which were used partially as a source of divination. So sheep knuckle bones were thrown up in the air and then they landed, and like there were games you could play with that. But over time, knuckle bones got like customized and the size got filed down. So what was originally used by often like priests or like people to figure out, should we hunt west or east today? You throw the knuckle bones up in the air and read them like tea leaves. Those eventually became like, the games we can play bees, and then they got filed down, and then they became dice. This is why, the idea of rolling dice is like throwing the bones, because they were bones originally. But so if you're throwing dice and you think like there's an almost gamers, but we all like these we have superstitions around dice, right? The fact that we have superstitions around dice and we don't know they were originally religious is so dumb. Like, I can't stand the fact that when you think about gamer culture, we think our culture dates back to the 1960s. Makes me want to die. And right, because it eliminates so much of the female history of the hobby, so much of the like non-white history of the hobby. And it also just makes the hobby less cool, because like gambling, cards and dice is sick. I mean, like, obviously not, but because casinos have put like so much money into that stuff, like, there's a reason that James Bond plays poker, right? Like, there's a reason that we can see a pile of poker chips and have an immediate emotional reaction. There's a reason that craps dice being thrown. With other language has so many like what's the word, like, and terms of phrase around like gambling.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it's all baked in. And the fact that like when video games were invented, we're like, our hobby starts here, and then now we're like, we're all playing Slay the Spire, and we're realizing that D&D is cool, and it's like, actually, video games are cool, and some card games and some storytelling games, it's like, oh, did we decide that stuff was cool again? Because if so, we have thousands of years of history, like, and lessons to be learned, like, Jesus, oh my God, drives me nuts. Like, Balatro is like the biggest selling card game ever, right? And it's all it's doing is riffing on poker. But when I was doing card game stuff for Shut Up and Sit Down, I found out about like Bray, which is really popular among the like basketball players in the NBA. Fucking great card game that you can play for money. Super silly, hilarious, funny, immediate, simple. Or like cribbage, which I learned is a joke. And it's actually like, someone could make the Balatro for cribbage and do really well. And like, I don't know, it's just, I guess it's funny to hear myself get heated about like us not engaging with what's happening in China, but then also to hear myself get really worked up about like we're not engaging with our history. It's like, there's so much stuff that's just there for the picking in terms of games being more interesting, both like as a culture and also just for designers to steal from. And it suddenly feels like, I tell you, it just feels so rare-minded.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have talked to Evan Turner, who's trying to recover all of the like parlor games and conversational games that are the other kind of versions of role playing when we don't think about war games, when we don't think about everything starting with Kriegspiel in Prussia and we introduced an umpire to this.
Yeah, right. Like, that's such a myopic view of where the hobby comes from. Can I talk about my favorite sexy Victorian parlor game that they played at parties? Well, they would this is from a buck of Victorian games, and there's loads of really good ones. Like you have two newspapers, and then you're given something like you have to look like Abraham Lincoln, and I have to look like an elephant, and then the rest of your team just uses a newspaper to make that outfit around you. So it's just newspaper and tape. And then you end up looking insane. My favorite actual sexy game though is like you hang a sheet in a doorway, and so the only thing you can see is about 7 inches of at the bottom. And then people, I don't want to get the too excited, but what you do is you take turns taking off your shoes and socks. And then someone, like the tiniest peep show, walks in front of the gap. And then everyone at the party has to guess whose feet they are.
That is some wiki feet nonsense.
That's the Victorians were cooking. They're like, yeah, but like the idea that is like
coming soon to drop out.
Yeah. I love it. Like did you hear what Miss Sarah did last week? She was looking at his feet. God. Anyway, let's engage with that stuff. And the Victorians have got to be hiding some stuff for the next giant
history box. Is full of weird stuff we have forgotten.
Yes.
We are an hour into our proceedings. And so we could, obviously, I could talk to you forever. Although it's always fun to not have a recording. Although this has been incredibly illuminating and fun to watch. We can also do some questions from the audience.
Oh, that would be because you folks really seem clued up. So yeah, I would love to do some questions.
Yeah. Are there any boundaries that you'd like to set in those questions?
If there are, the question will come in and I'll go, no.
Okay.
But no, I don't think so. I like the hard questions.
Yeah. Do we have questions in the audience?
If the audience just say them, we can repeat them into the mic.
Yes, we can. Yeah. Yeah, hi.
I was wondering, what kind of role do you think trying to get certain games, kind of like less popular ones, implement it into this like campus mainstream media? What kind of role do you think that might have? Because I know like with Stranger Things, I knew so much people who didn't know anything about D&D.
Oh, right, yeah.
Stranger Things, and I was like, gotcha.
So yeah, the question is, what role do we think it plays to try and get cameos of games or more niche games into mainstream media, like the appearance of D&D and Stranger Things? I mean, clearly, Stranger Things teaches us that stuff is really important.
No. So I have at home, I don't think you saw this, but the Stranger Things with which is like too many years too late. But of course, like it's really hard to disambiguate the power of that Stranger Things cameo or like the invocation of the Big Bang Theory. Like Alex Chalk has written about like the chronology of D&D appearing in popular media. And for a really long time, it was basically pejorative, right? It was like, nerds play this. Stranger Things slightly twists that. But what's happening at the same time, and so it's entirely impossible to disambiguate, is the rise of actual play, right? Actually watching Friends at the Table, metaphorically speaking, because actual Friends at the Table, the podcast, plays literally anything other than D&D. But Critical Role, later Dimension 20, before that, Acquisitions Incorporated had a direct relationship with Wizards of the Coast. I mean, and that's before Stranger Things, right? And so I think there is something to be said for the kind of the ability in algorithmically to encounter it in different forms of kind of media. But I don't know, is there a mainstream media anymore?
To me, I feel like
maybe if they played it on the pit, I don't know.
I remember because I was like, when we were doing board games on Shut Up and Sit Down, we were always like really excited. The Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at TV meme whenever we saw stuff, and it was like the thing with that most mainstream media appearances is you will not get an obscure reference past the many people like. The set designer, the director, the editor, whoever else you simply cannot force one of those references. Like when I was a big part of board games, Silicon Valley had characters that were playing the niche board games we were reviewing. And so there were copies. We would review stuff and then it would appear a year later on the set, which was cool. But like it was in the background and not even well lit because the gaffer is not going to light part of the set that doesn't make sense. So it's kind of, you can't force those cameos because a cameo that people don't understand just reads weird. So like, yeah, I don't know. I think it's more like the cameos are the bellwether for how accepted games are, rather than the cameos like raising the profile of games. But it's still, they do have culture and relevance, but I don't think they are, I think they just happen naturally. It's like mushrooms after the rain or something.
Yeah, which comes first is the other thing. Other questions that are emerging. Yeah.
How do you feel about what was the one in China?
Jubentia?
How do you feel that relates to kind of the modern craze around escape rooms here in America and out in the US?
It's similar, and in China, there's literally in the documentary there's a graph for this. Like the peak of escape rooms in America, I think there was something like 10 times as many Jubentia shops in China. China has a much larger population, but it's like the population is like 3.2 times bigger, but it had 10 times as much. So like it's bigger than that craze, but it's similar. That it's like the similar kind of like people wanting to spend their money on experiences out in the world. So it does touch. Also, the thing they both have in common is escape rooms, the real physical escape rooms, are born out of Flash video games, and then similarly, Jubentia was born out of like murder mystery dinner parties. So they're both huge crazes that were born out of like a tiny weird little seed that then just takes off. Yeah, no, there's definitely similarities between escape rooms and Jubentia. Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. I know you talked about like your role as a game journalist, as somebody who reviews games, is to make people interested in playing those games. But I think what I'm wondering is, could you talk about how you're not as interested in reviewing the PDF versus the glossy package?
Mm-hmm.
Is part of that it's easier to introduce people, and it's also the ease of review? Like how does that?
Honestly, it's a really good question. The cheapest answer is like, it's also the people who design the product are also artists. So like if I've got a game that's like glossy and fancy and has nice layout and nice interior art, which are both different skills to even just writing, editing, that's a whole like other career that that people are like. So the chap answer is like, well, actually, I'm reviewing 8 artists as opposed to 1. I also
at least
yeah, sure, but it is a cheap answer. And I part of it is just like Vav, Shut Up and Sit Down, and less so with people make games while I'm doing documentaries. With Shut Up and Sit Down and Quinns Quest, I'm an evangelist that shows you how amazing the sector can be. And it's about showing up the ridiculous injustice of being like, look at this stunning thing. I'm going to talk you through all the ways it's amazing. And at the end, you're going to feel stupid for not knowing about it. That was my recipe for success in Shut Up and Sit Down and Quinns Quest. And I just can't do that with something that looks research. Eventually I can once I've built up huge clout and trust, I can be like, okay, everybody, this one thing that looks bad is the best RPG ever. And people will be like, okay, but that's not where I'm at right now.
What do you think the metric is for that amount of sway?
Honestly, what I'd turn the question back on you and be like, who's the artist who's out here making a game that's that good that it's a crazy injustice? I'm not covering it. And is not willing to put a really nice piece of cover art on it. That's not willing to put it in front of editors and playtesters.
No one said it was edited. More said not play tested. So our friends, last time we played together, we played 7-Part Pact.
Yes.
And we...
Wait, Jay knows what's up. It's not...
But she's also said that, with that game in particular, there is a non-zero chance that she puts it in a box, puts it in the closet, and doesn't publish it.
I hate it. But,
I'm glad you hate it and not me.
Yeah. I won't answer the question because I've got the mic and that's my prerogative. But what I will say is that there is my favorite fact that I drop on podcasts all the time, so I feel like half of the people should know it. But the root of the word media, we love this chestnut. The root of the word media, which, like I said, you're the press, you're the media, right, is the same root as the word medium, as in people who talk to ghosts. The thing, both of that midi at the beginning means you're the middle. So the medium is the gap between the spirit world and the real world. You are the channel through which ghosts talk. The media, which I'm the person who lets the artists talk to the audience. But the artist makes something that the audience can't play. There's always a documentary on it, and that could be a way that the audience experience it, right? But it's not my favorite. There are lots of people that do that. I'm just more interested in little lot of transformative experiences, by themselves. I almost I'm not going to go to war over this, but I actually think it's kind of selfish for an artist to. It gets on my nerves when artists are like, I'm going to make this great game for me, and I'm going to do one print run. This was really common in RPGs 10 years ago. I'm going to do a print run of 200 copies for my friends, and then I'll be done. Because in 2010, while I was on Shut Up and Sit Down, I emailed some of those people being like, hey, I think your game's great. I want people all over the world to play it. I want you to do another print run. I can promise you I can sell out your print run if you do it. And I got them not replying to my emails because they didn't care, because they were making games for their community. I'm supposed to feel about that. It's annoying. It's it's all
people with a different definition of community and who their public is and who they're for.
And for me, I'm trying to make games better. I'm trying to accelerate the art form forward, and I can't do that when people are making games for their small community in a certain region. It's I can't. It's really disempowering and irritating for me. I don't know, but not pretty away from your question, but there was a good question. Thank you.
Their curiosity. Yeah, Ray.
So earlier you talked that I had not really thought of the differences between the spaces of video games, board games, and TTRPGs and the design space. I'm a graphic designer, or I'm going to be.
You are right now.
I am. Maybe.
You are right now.
But I thought it was interesting you mentioned how in the TTRPG space, it's a lot more of a labor of love the artist put into it, and the criticism has. He didn't say this, but I kind of assume the criticism has to be kind of more padded sometimes, or some people things. I just wanted to hear about that difference for the space of in video games. If I were as a designer on that, I would expect a lot of eyes and criticism on whatever I'm doing. That would just be expected. Is that kind of not expected in the TTRPG space as I guess an art medium? Is that criticism?
Yeah, that I think so much of it just comes from the fact that there was no money in TTRPGs like as little as 10 years ago. There was in the 80s and the 90s, and then everyone stopped playing them. And then for 20 years, it's just been this like tiny, like burned out community of people who are just like, well, no one's playing these games, but we love them and we're going to make them. And then for that, you get a community that values like reputation a lot because they're not doing it for a job. They're doing it because they love it and because they believe in it and want to make art. And that does not rhyme super well with a critic showing up and then being like, well, this sucks. Like, because the only thing they're doing it is for that they're doing it because it's part of their soul. And that's different in board games where you are very much selling a toy. It's different in video games where you're selling like a product or an experience. And lots of people in TTRPGs can see that things are changing. They can see that like they need, graphic designers. They need to like shape up because lots of people are just putting out more and more and more professional products. And yeah, there's a lot of bumpy lessons to be learned from people where they're like, they don't necessarily realize the way that they need to like, I don't know, shape up. Yeah.
Other curious, yes. Well, so like as a journalist, like I'm a journalism major.
Cool.
That's like one of my interests is in game journalism. It's like something that I'm into. So like, what are your main?
Oh man, I love it. Yeah, cool. First off, yeah, do it. It's fun. It worked for me. Don't listen to other people who are like it's dreadful and they've flamed out at 25. First off, think a lot about the kind of games journalism that doesn't exist, but you wish it did. Like you're gonna like if you listen to your heart, you'll be like, I kind of like this streamer, but they never talk about this kind of game, or like the stuff you find yourself looking for. Probably if you don't find it, it straight up doesn't exist, and then you can make it. The other thing is that for me, I always tell journalism or like content creators to put, like I mentioned earlier, put your politics front and center in your work, because the way you make money as a content creator, as a streamer, or as like somebody who makes money on Patreon, you're trying to. It doesn't matter if you have 300,000 people who like you, kinda, because then you've got 0 customers who will pay. You want to maximize the number of customers who will subscribe to your Twitch channel and will pay on Patreon. So you need the people who are like, I fucking love this person. And so if you put what you believe in, I don't know, whether you believe in like, I don't know, animal rights, or, it's just something, far more like spiky and relevant or human. Not to say animal rights aren't human, not spiky or relevant. Oh God. You're going to eliminate the audience members who are like, well, that's not me, but you're going to maximize the audience members who will be like, I see myself reflected in you. And those are the people who are going to pay. And other than that, just do it. Just start making it, because it's like, writing or making videos is like, it's like learning anything else. If you want to learning to cook, I really like this description. It's like learning to cook there are 1,000 mistakes you have to make, and you have to make all of them. So just start making them as fast as possible. And the writing is the same, but it's more abstract. But if you think of writing or videography as like, you have to make 1,000 mistakes, so hurry up. How many have you made yet? How many have you made so far? Like 10? Like you got 990 more to make. So like, and then you'll be really good. So you'll make stuff that's bad or cringe or whatever, and then but also the weird thing about making stuff at the beginning of your career is like, what's so mad about the pathologic thing? I wrote that the pathologic article is one of the things I'm most famous for, and I wrote that when I took a job in Dubai. I was so depressed. When my boss wasn't looking, I tabbed to a .txt notepad file where I wrote the pathologic article, and then he would look over and I'd tab back. That's how the article was written. I didn't expect anything from it. So my point is like, you're gonna think that your stuff is like, oh, maybe this is okay or it sucks, or maybe this is okay or it sucks. But there's a pretty good chance in that, like, oh, this sucks stuff, you will produce the thing that people really love, and you never know what thing that's going to be. So yeah, just be political, start making mistakes, and think about what you wish existed but doesn't. But yeah, I'm really glad I got to say that to you. So thank you for asking.
Yeah.
Should I do like one more?
Sure.
Question. So, like, what kind of drew you to one playing Pathologic, and two, especially covering it as a job? Because especially 10 years ago, Pathologic wasn't very well known. It was still the original version. it was what Google translated. Even HD was still.
Oh, I covered it. The reason HD have even got made is because of my article, like pushing it forward. I covered it because I read there was a magazine that I liked at the time, and Kieran Gillen actually, who he wrote a review of it where it's in magazines. You know, if it's like a weird game no one's going to like Pathologic, you get a really small article. And Kieran, in like what is a really, if you're a journalist given a huge piece of art that everyone's going to hate, and it's like, here, review it in 200 words, that's really hard. But he used this killer line that he didn't have time to play all of it, but he used the line in it, this is going to be someone's favorite game of all time, it just won't be yours. And that is like so clean. And I read that and I was like, fuck you, it's going to be mine. And then I played it, and I wrote the article, but he didn't have the time or the common inches to write. No, I got this question earlier. No, I didn't, because that's not what art is about. That I just Emily's poor class beforehand, like, got a huge rant from me about how like it's like this very nerdy gamer mindset that like everything has to be completed, everything has to be filled in a wiki. You finish the piece of art and then you need to watch a YouTube video asking what did it mean. And like I've been there. I finished Silk Song recently and then really enjoyed a 2-hour lore video on what it meant. But that's not how art is consumed in any other medium. Like you can play Pathologic for an hour and that's still a valid artistic experience. You do not need to play the whole thing. And when I complete it, it's like I get a question as well when reviewing stuff, like, how do you know when you've played enough that you're able to review it? And the answer is like, you just know. You just do. And similarly with Pathologic, it's like, how do you know when you've got what you're going to get out of this piece of art? Like, I just knew. I completed a playthrough and went, thank God I'd never have to play this again. But I'm going to write 7,000 words about it. Yeah, anyone who did play all through playthrough, that's cool.
I am going to ask one more question on behalf of... No, I just want to bring us full circle. I'm also...
You know, in journalism, this is when you ask the shitty question.
No, it's not the shitty... Well, you get to be the judge of that. But shout out to the Quinns Quest Discord. To bring back to the other idea of community. One piece of advice for folks who are trying to recruit folks into a game.
Oh, into
into coming into a table to play.
I think it's common for people who want to recruit friends to come and play games to be like, they want to do that because there's a game they really want to play. Like, I've read Blades in the Dark. I really want to run it, and I'm going to try and drag my friends over. And you can do that. And I don't know if it's necessarily the best thing to do because when inviting friends over, the thing that's going to keep them coming back is if they get the most out of it. So I think it's worth, if you want to build a community of people to play games with, I think it's worth asking, like, who are the people that I most want to use? And you could ask yourself, like, what kind of games I want to play, and then think who would enjoy them the most. Or you think who I want to hang out with the most, and then what games can I play, and then maybe I can evolve into like a slightly different kind of game. But ultimately, it's about the other people. And I don't know. I think that's going to build your community up to a good start. I mean, also, even if you want to put your friends through something wild, like Impossible Landscapes for Delta Green, you can say, come over and play D&D. And then you show them a good time playing D&D because that's what they're comfortable with. And then you've shown all that you care about their good time. And then you say to them, hey, I've shown you I had a good time for however many months. Now I would like you to trust me. And I think you're going to love this other thing. But you start with thinking about them. And then once they trust you, then you can say, I'm going to blow your mind. But you can't start with I'm going to blow your mind because they're like, I'm busy, actually. I want to... I have to study.
Born already from the hellscape we live. No. Quinns, this has been a delight as always. Thank you for the gift of your time, and thank you all for being
so much for coming. I'm really flattered.
Let's thank once again Quintin Smith.
Thank you.
We have a reception. We have about 45 minutes before we'll start. If you can check in, I believe Mabin's going to have a list of the signups for Blood on the Clock Tower, which we'll transition into in a little bit.
And we will see if there's any empty spaces. We'll figure it out. But priority will be those who registered, and then we'll move from there. Thank you guys so much. But Quinns does have time to, well, we need to make sure you eat, but also please come say hi. Yeah. Thank you very much.